Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. I'm Teniola Shoboale, standing in for your regular host, Amarachi Ubani. Let's begin the program by taking a quick check on discussions in diplomatic circles.
Iran has denied accusations of involvement in an attack on an Israeli-managed petroleum product tanker off the coast of Oman. A Briton and a Romanian were killed when the Mercer Street, a Liberian-flagged Japanese-owned ship managed by Israeli-owned Zodiac Maritime, was attacked, apparently by a drone. Israel has blamed Iran for the attack. Both countries have traded accusations of carrying out attacks on each other's vessels in recent months. The U.S. has urged the Tunisian president to outline a swift return to democracy, days after his shock seizure of governing powers.
I stand before you as a symbol of the crown that wronged you nearly 50 years ago.
New Zealand's Prime Minister has formally apologised for an immigration crackdown in the 1970s against Pacific Islanders. The Dawn raids targeted people who overstayed their visas, deporting them to their countries of origin.
Today, I stand on behalf of the New Zealand Government to offer a formal and unreserved apology to Pacific communities for the discriminatory implementation of the immigration laws of the 1970s that led to the events of the Dawn raids.
And a shipment of 410,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses donated by Britain has arrived in Kenya.
This is the first of two deliveries we'll be making. This is the bilateral donation, and we're also sending some through the COVAX system, of which we're great supporters. So we'll be sending 817,000 doses, hopefully in the next week.
Britain, which has fully vaccinated 72% of its adults, is sending 9 million Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines overseas in the first batch of donations to Indonesia, Jamaica, and Kenya.
World leaders have pledged more than $4 billion to support schools and tackle a catastrophic disruption to schooling globally caused by the pandemic. The Global Education Summit, co-hosted by Kenya and the UK, it aimed to raise $5 billion to create an extra 88 million school places and support the learning of 175 million children during the next 5 years. The summit emphasized the importance of equitable access to education amid warnings that COVID-19 has worsened already under-resourced public education programs in developing countries.
That is the objective, to unleash potential across the planet.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his Kenyan counterpart Uhuru Kenyatta co-hosted the Global Partnership of Education's Global Summit on July the 29th, urging countries to commit funds to improving education in developing countries, especially for girls.
To you, Julia Gillard, thank you so much.
Nobel Peace Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai and the World Health Organization's Director General were among the speakers at the summit.
We all know that the world is facing a girls' education crisis. Nearly 130 million girls were out of school before the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, 20 million more girls are at risk of dropping out because of it.
World leaders, including Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari and the heads of NGOs and financial organizations, joined in discussions co-hosted by GPE Chair and former Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard. Speaking during a panel session at the Global Education Summit, President Muhammadu Buhari pledged a 50% increase in the education budget in the next 2 years, saying education occupies top priority in his administration.
Education is a starting point.
Yes.
Anybody who missed the opportunity of receiving education, he has missed everything. because you cannot succeed outside your educational qualification. This is very clear to everybody, hence the fight for opportunities for education is very, very severe. The problem of infrastructure, physical and intellectual. Physical is the sense of classrooms, equipment,
textbooks.
Intellectual, the teachers, and convincing those who are really qualified to go into teaching profession. Teaching profession, you would rather go where engineers are wanted, where they will award contracts,
yes,
rather than fight children day in and day out. So I assure you that Nigerians are acutely aware of the priorities of education. And they are going all out to make the necessary savings and make the necessary inputs to make sure that their children and their wards get the opportunity to have the best of education.
At the closing ceremony, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta said funds could help educate up to 46 million girls by supporting their enrollment in school and save another 2 million from child marriages.
These resources will provide catalytic support to get more than 175 million boys and girls in school. It will help to enroll 88 million more children in school, including 46 million more girls, and also protect 2 million girls from child marriages, essentially helping us to deliver on the promise of education as a social economic development.
In his speech, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson highlighted the gross disparity in the education of boys and girls around the world.
If you educate the world, then of course, educate the world properly, educate the world fairly, then of course you end a great natural injustice. But you also, and if you end the injustice that 9 out of 10 people, 9 out of 10 10-year-olds cannot read a story around the country. 132 million kids aren't in school. Or in many of the countries represented here, alas, there are too few girls in school, and there is a gross disparity in the education of boys and girls. And if you end that injustice, and you give every girl in the world the same education as every boy, 12 years of quality education, then you perform the most fantastic benefits for humanity.
The Global Partnership for Education, which distributes funding in more than 90 poorer countries, wanted to raise $5 billion to create an extra 88 million school places and support the learning of 175 million children during the next 5 years. Despite world leaders repeatedly citing the importance of education for youngsters across the world, donations amounted to around $4 billion for a 5-year funding cycle for the GPE.
Well, for more on the Global Education Summit, we're being joined by Malala Fund Education Champion, Habiba Mohammed. She's also co-director, Center for Girls Education. A warm welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
I know you followed the discussions around this summit closely, so let's just begin with your thoughts on the aim of the summit, and did it meet your expectations?
Well, for me, the aim of the conference was, the summit was for all global leaders to come together and find a lasting solution to the crisis in education. But for me, my expectation was a bit higher than what I got. They were asking for funding for about $5 billion or so, and they got just for I was expecting them to get higher than what they demanded because of the situation of education in the whole world, not just in Africa, not just in Asia, but everywhere in the world.
During the summit, Malala said the world is facing a girls' education crisis. Data clearly shows girls are more likely not to finish school. Why the disparity?
Even without the pandemic, we have issue of girls not completing schools, especially when you look at the very remote, very rural, very hard to reach areas. Enrollment at the beginning is the same with boys and girls, but when they move to transition from maybe primary school to secondary school, junior secondary school to senior secondary school, you find out that the girls drop. And with the pandemic and the insecurity, many parents are like afraid to allow their children to continue school. So they prefer that the children get married or even stay at home out of school, but alive for them to, it's better than for them to allow them to go to school. Maybe they will be kidnapped, maybe things that they never thought before will happen to the children. So the disparity is there, and we need to address all these issues so that girls can stay in school and complete schooling.
Another major crisis the world is facing is the coronavirus pandemic, forcing millions around the world out of school for more than a year. This has essentially pushed back on progress made over the years, right? Do you think the world will be able to catch up fast?
I truly think that it is possible for the world to be able to catch up fast. And when new innovations are introduced into the education sector, like leveraging on technology-supported learning to improve quality education, and providing girls with like safe spaces for them to be able to know who they are and be able to want to continue education, and for girls to be able to learn and lead without fear anywhere they are. I think it will support this. And for governments to support the strengthening of teachers' capacity, that is training and retraining of teachers, so that teachers can be able to deliver well and girls and others can be able to get quality education.
For many in northern Nigeria, though, insecurity has more to do with them being out of school than, let's say, the pandemic. According to UN estimates, more than 1,000 schools are currently closed in northern Nigeria. President Buhari was at that meeting where he insisted, education is a priority for his administration. Coming from that summit, what actions do you want to see?
I was so happy that the president Buhari went to the summit, and he gave his words that his administration will support education. I think what I am looking for to see, and other educationists like me, is that to see increased funding in education in Nigeria, and for us to employ new techniques that will support education, like new methodologies, like supporting girls with quality teachers support system that will support teachers to do well in class and be able to provide the adequate learning that children need. And this issue of safe spaces that I was saying, girls should be able to have it in every school, so that girls can be able to understand that they have a goal that they are looking towards accomplishing. And there should be training and retraining of teachers, as I said, because if we don't strengthen the capacities of the teachers, we will not be able to get what we want. Quality education is what we want, education that can be of service. And through this strengthening, it should include teachers' salaries. They should increase teachers' salaries, because from what we have with the inflation, teachers need to be looked after, because teachers are the mothers of all. They provide all other professions. And apart from that, their welfare should be looked into. A teacher should be provided with a house, with transportation, with things that will ease their lives, so that they will concentrate on working and making sure that they deliver the content that they are supposed to deliver. And apart from that, providing access to technology for both teachers and pupils. That is, it means electricity should be functional, and everywhere should have electricity to support technology, because if there is no electricity too, there will be problem. All this will improve access to education and support enrollment, retention, and completion of schooling for girls and for everyone. And the learning outcomes will improve. And this is what we want to see. Every girl, every child going to school and learning that will be useful for life.
Yeah, we do hope for a world where every child has access to quality education. Habiba Mohammed, co-director, Center for Girls Education, and a Malala Fund education champion. Thank you so much for your time once again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for staying with us. After 20 years of diplomatic efforts, Israel has finally obtained African Union observer status. According to the Israeli Foreign Ministry, the new status could enable Israel and the AU to forge stronger cooperation on various aspects. But not everyone is welcoming this. The South African government says it's appalled by the bloc's decision.
Israel had previously held observer role at the Organization of African Unity, OAU, but was long thwarted in its attempt to regain it after the OAU was disbanded in 2002 and replaced by the African Union. But on July the 22nd of this year, AU Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mohammed handed Israel the observer status, a move the two parties expected will enable Israel to further help the AU battle the coronavirus pandemic and terrorism on the continent. South Africa says the decision was taken unilaterally by the African Union Commission without consulting the 55 member states.
It's a decision that was taken by the chair of the Commission and without consulting the member states. Certainly we were not consulted. We have views because we are concerned about what is happening in Palestine. The continued situation there in Palestine, in our view, militates against just warmly accepting Israel as an observer in Africa, particularly in view of the positions and the views that we have taken ourselves as a country against the state of Israel on this issue.
South Africa backs the Palestinian cause with formal diplomatic relations established in 1995, a year after the end of the apartheid, and it downgraded its embassy in Tel Aviv in 2019. The Palestinian territories already have observer status at the AU, and pro-Palestinian language is typically featured in statements delivered at the AU's annual summits. Algeria, Namibia, and a number of other African countries have rejected Israel's observer status. A number of political parties and social movements on the continent have joined forces to demand that AU member states reject Israel's accreditation. Some, like the EFF, have even called for the resignation of the AU Commission chairperson over the matter. But how likely is this observer status to be revoked? And is this dispute just about Israel?
This growing tension is a product of the disconnect between the administrative and political powers of the African Union chair, position. So by the protocol establishing it, the Commission implements decisions and policies made by the Assembly of Heads of State. And there has been tensions between both organs of the African Union from inception, in 2002, over the limits of the powers of the Commission's chair. So I'm sure this issue will resurrect and test this tension in the coming days. But I don't believe that the observer status will be revoked, because although this is is of much political interest to countries like South Africa and many others that support the Palestinian cause, granting observer status to Israel is only fair, because Palestine already has that status with the AU. And if the AU is to practice its own principles, then it needs to be fair and just in dealing with all parties involved in the conflict.
South Africa has asked Musa Faki Mohammed, chairman of the AU Commission, to brief member states on the decision, and it hopes the issue will be discussed at the level of heads of states and governments.
And finally on the program, 70 years ago, on July the 28th, the Refugee Convention was born, a key international treaty establishing the rights of people forced to flee and the emergence of the UN Refugee Agency to protect those rights. 26 million global refugees later, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Filippo Grandi, says the convention continues to protect the rights of refugees across the world. At an event commemorating its platinum anniversary in Lagos, the UNHCR, alongside its partners, acknowledged that more work still needs to be done.
And Africa. And the numbers of those in need.
It's been 70 years of successes and challenges for an agency set up to meet the needs of the casualties of Europe's wars, but that has expanded since the Second World War to reach almost every nation in the world.
When I started working for UNHCR over 20 years ago, the number of refugees in the world was actually decreasing. And I was thinking, maybe someday there won't be any more refugees in the world. Maybe I can go home and find another job. But fast forward to the Arab Spring and the rise of repressive governments in the world, Syria, millions displaced internally or crossing the borders into Turkey. I think Turkey is the largest refugee hosting country in the world now. Jordan, Greece, and further beyond in Europe, Syrians have managed to integrate and start new lives. When I was recently in Germany, I was on the train, riding on the train, listening to what I thought were probably Syrian refugees speaking fluent German. I was really amazed at their ability to integrate.
This event in Lagos, small as it may be because of COVID-19 protocols, is one of the many held around the world to mark the anniversary of the 1951 convention.
Here in Lagos Island.
Later, a panel of discussants take on a review of the agency's roles and domestication of it in Nigeria.
Our experience in Nigeria has not been very, very rosy when it comes to the protection of the rights of refugees. Because the law has been domesticated, Nigerian courts do not hesitate to ensure that justice is meted out to victims of persecution, political persecution.
Nigeria government has the legal framework for the protection of refugees in Nigeria. And to add more to that, it has the institutional authority, National Commission for Refugees, for management of refugees and IDPs in Nigeria. It has further again capacity, manpower that are on ground in handling a situation of this nature.
Civil society and humanitarian organizations are present here. As founder Wellbeing Foundation, Mrs. Bukola Saraki speaks on the importance of philanthropy in helping refugees resettle.
The world of philanthropy today looks at a situation, looks at where government may wish to go but does not have the swiftness or the agility or the nimbleness to help, and we can study that data, design a program, put our own money where our mouth is, not because we want to do a permanent solution, but because we want to bring out a best practice model that government can later look at and adopt. So in doing so, we're actually being able to move quite quickly to manage traumas correctly and to minimize further displacement, further infringement of rights, and try to advocate for all the sectors to take the right actions.
While Lagos State Government and Nigeria pride itself as welcoming refugees, those at the event speak their mind. It's one of making new friends and still facing challenges.
To Nigeria, I think exploiting the provisions of the 1951 convention, I have been, together with the fact that I'm called to the Nigerian bar, I've been able to survive and make a living. I move freely. I have access to justice, access to health, and there is nowhere I cannot go.
The UNHCR says it continues to support the Nigerian government and partners with civil society organizations in establishing response platforms. As long as there's a need, they will be here for Nigeria.
And this is where we end the program today. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, you can catch up on all our other episodes on youtube.com/channelsweb. I'm Tenyola Shoboale. Bye for now.